And we are going live. All right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a special episode of Ethan Plays Live.
Don't force me out of bed in your society. Don't push me down the road you're bringing down. Don't try to fix my head, it's just your anxiety. Don't hush me now, cause I just wanna shout. Don't make me dance to a tune that you're humming. No, my body don't move like that. Don't make me pretend I don't see your shortcomings. You'll be running when I raise the black flag. Get out your bomb and fly away. We'll be dancing with our hands in the air when our new dawn is rising. To the break of dawn.
All right, welcome to this very special episode of Ethan Plays Live. I am Ethan, and today we are continuing our series on the old GDC, the old Great Debate Community. This is Requiem for the Great Debate Community, and in a few minutes we'll be talking with Fiona Robertson. Fiona's ready, and she is in the backstage area, ready to make her debut. I just need to go over a couple of things with you guys first. One, I am going for partner on Twitch. Basically, I'm not going to all the reasons right now, but I am able to talk about politics over on Twitch. So if politics is something that you like to hear me talk about, that's the place to be following me. There's a robust political community over on Twitch that I'm excited to take part in. Most of the conversations that I have over there will make it here to YouTube, but they'll make it pre-recorded. So if you want live commentary for me on political and social issues, Twitch is the place to follow me. It will be live on Twitch. It will then go to the Patreon patrons, and then it will debut here. The first of those videos is available right now on Patreon. You just go to patreon.com/EthanPlaysLive. I had a great conversation last night with Homo Zygote, who is a molecular biologist currently going for his PhD in neuroscience. And we took a lot of questions from the live chat about COVID-19 and the vaccine and all the different things. We talked for like an hour and a half. That is available right now on Patreon if you're a Patreon patron, and it will debut here on YouTube tomorrow, roughly about 3 p.m. Eastern time. So definitely check that out if you're not on Twitch, and if you're not a Patreon, you're okay with waiting. You can do that. So this channel is not monetized, so you cannot super chat. But if you go over to paypal.me/EthanPlaysLive and you make a donation, you can add a little note below. If you have a question or a comment that you need Fiona and myself to see, go ahead and add it. I will make sure that it happens. We are going to have a Q&A period after she and I talk for a bit, and I'm going to get as many of your questions and comments up on screen as I can. But if you have something you absolutely need her to answer or need me to answer or need to say, that's the best way to make sure that it happens. Let's get Fiona in here. Fiona, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. Live chat, if you do have a question and you want to make sure that it gets up on screen, just make sure that you tag me, because I can put your comments up on screen just like I did with lolcows. Fiona, how are you today?
I'm absolutely fine.
I'm glad.
Still recovering from my adventures with horses, but other than that, fine.
Yeah, so you got literally kicked in the teeth, correct?
Not quite kicked in the teeth. I got yanked into the air, swung around and dangled around and pinged off. And I've smashed even more teeth.
Ouch. Well,
quite.
Remind me never to do that.
No, don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. Okay, so I start all of these interviews off with the same question. How did you find the old G plus community called the Great Debate Community?
Well, it was through a program, a podcast, which became a Hangouts live thing called Fundamentally Flawed. That was run by Alex Boughton and Jim Gardner. And a guy that I talked to on Facebook a lot, Matt Hunt, Dr. Matt Hunt, he introduced me to Fundamentally Flawed. And I started joining their after shows. And then I was in a couple of the broadcasts, and that's how I found it. I didn't even know G Plus existed up until then.
So it was just
'Cause I'm a
Google Hangouts?
Sorry?
It was just Google Hangouts?
Yeah, I mean, I'd been part of the loose Great Debate community, as in a bunch of unaffiliated people who talked about these topics. And I started about 2000 with a message forum called Evolution versus Creation. And so nothing was done by voice. Everything was all typed out. You could write a War and Peace post for these things. It was great. And then about 2013, 2014, I discovered G Plus and Hangouts and Fundamentally Flawed.
Okay.
And that's how I ended up on G Plus. And everybody was always shouting in Hangouts, and it was great.
Yes, they were. Okay, so what were some of the topics that you personally like to talk about?
Oh, I was all about you can accept evolution and still be a Christian. And I was all about trying to educate people on what evolution and the theory of evolution are, because that's two different things. And it was trying to explain to people that evolution is a biological process that we observe happening. And the theory of evolution is the explanation as to how evolution, the process, comes about. This is what I was trying to explain to people. And I was going up against the young earth creationists who seemed to think that if you accepted evolution, then you couldn't be a Christian. They equate it with atheism. And I think I sort of set the cat amongst the pigeons a little bit. And it didn't go down very well with the fundamentalist creationists.
Are you a Catholic?
I am.
Okay.
I converted in 2000.
Okay.
I was a Protestant before that.
So do you feel like that was a big inspiration for you? Was that you got to confront the young earth creationists in these groups?
Yes, that was my main objective. And I wasn't there to do any preaching, because I'm not qualified to preach to anybody. I would explain my own faith if I had to, but that was it. But my main goal was to try and explain the science, because some of the takes that I saw on it coming from young earth creationists were damn well frightening. And it was round about that time, if you remember, where they were trying to shove intelligent design into schools in America. And it was in, I think, 2005-ish time was the judgment was handed down in the Dover trial, if you remember that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So, and all this was done, though, in writing. So when I came into Hangouts and actually voice chats, it was still that sort of thing that I was interested in. It was the science education part of it, and why science and accepting evolution doesn't mean that you can't also have...
Yeah, phony beatlemaniac. This is exactly what I was going to bring up. So for those of us who have been on YouTube for a long time, and I mean, I was on YouTube before Google owned YouTube. Back in the day, we used to have these things called video responses. So somebody would put up a video, and in the comments, you could just click a button and leave a video response. It was just how YouTube worked. It was a fundamental part of the platform. Were you using YouTube at that time, Fiona?
No, I wasn't. I had a YouTube channel, but that was only because I had to make a YouTube account to leave comments under YouTube videos. I didn't make videos. It was the most ridiculous name, horse tricks. And I mean, I made my Twitter account in 2009 and gave it that name as well. But I didn't use the channel for anything at all. Nothing. Other than leaving comments underneath a YouTube video here and there. That was it.
I first made mine when I was in college. I want to say it was 2006-ish. Because I was I was a double major. I was a major in political science and a major in communications. And I took a class on radio broadcasting. And as part of the radio broadcasting course, a couple of us were like, well, could we make videos instead of just recording our voices? And our professor was like, yeah, sure. So a couple of us just started YouTube channels and made videos. Those videos are deleted. So don't worry. And they're on my personal channel that I haven't uploaded anything to for years anyway. So don't worry about looking for them. But I made these fake news broadcasts that were these parody news. Yeah, it was like The Onion type of stuff that I made with a couple of friends in the class for our final. So the reason I bring all this up is that the temperature, the weather, and the environment itself was fundamentally different when you first came into these hangouts. Would you say that?
Yes. It was what us more mature people would call civilized. People tended to be quite polite. Things could get heated. But it was much more polite. Some respect was shown. You know how people will say, yeah, you don't just give respect, respect is earned. I mean, yeah, I go along with that. But that doesn't mean the default has to be disrespect. So it was, you treated people the way they were at the time treating you. You didn't come in guns blazing. Although after, I think the worst one was after the 11 hours of arguing with one person, I was reduced to a shrieking mess. Just through sheer frustration. But these things would go on for hours. And a lot of them weren't streamed live. And the ones that were, everybody was on their best behaviour. Don't see that now.
What do you think changed that?
I actually am not quite sure. But the phrase that springs to mind to cover what's happening now is the cruelty is the point. The single line ponage. I wrecked him. It's not about communicating with people anymore. It's all one-upmanship.
Right.
And I think that's what's destroyed the civil discourse, which we just don't have now.
One of the, if not the most central figure in the great debate community was Nadia. And I'd just like to hear you talk about Nadia for a minute.
Nadia, I really like Nadia. I didn't go into her hangouts very often because they were an absolute free-for-all. There was very little moderation, and it could depend on who was in those hangouts, how it went. There were certain players who would go into those hangouts and just scream over everybody, and nobody could say anything else. And I just wasn't very good at getting a word in edgeways. I would stop what I was saying to let you. I would, please. It was like, how do you describe it? Could you please shut up while I'm interrupting you? I would be the one that shut up to let somebody interrupt me.
Right.
And apologise for being in the middle of something when they interrupted me. So I wasn't very good at it. Took me a while to realise that if I kept doing that, I would just get walked all over the top of. And also in those hangouts, the difficulty that people had was that I spoke very fast. I'm actually a very fast speaker, and nobody could understand me. So I had to deliberately slow down my speaking, and then I went through a phase of being deliberately quote mined. So now you see the pauses in the way that I speak, and it's because I'm trying out the sentence in my head before I say it, trying to figure out, can this be quote mined? This is why I speak slowly and why I have long pauses, because I've been burned. It's just what some people do.
Sure, and I'm not trying to dredge up anything traumatic or anything, but could you give me some examples?
Well, there was one time I actually said, what was it? I'm trying to think of the exact words. I really cannot say that I believe God created the world in 6 days. And he lopped off the front of it and quoted only the bit, I believe God created the world in 6 days. And they missed out the bit at the beginning. I really can't believe that. Did you see what I mean? That type of dishonesty, I came across so many people using it. Do you think that I believe God created the world in 6 days? And they just lop off the front to make it say the opposite of what you were actually saying. So that's why I stop and think before I use a specific word or phrase. Will this be twisted? Will this be quote mined? And as I say, if I speak very quickly and if I don't modulate my Glaswegian accent, nobody can understand what I'm saying.
Sure. Did you try taking a few shots of scotch first, or?
I don't drink.
I'm just teasing.
What? I got drunk once on an episode of TST. My husband and son were away for Christmas and I had to stay home to look after the horses, and I was all on my own. And I got out a bottle of wine and I started off with a glass. And then I moved on to a mug. And by the end of TST, I was drinking it out of the bottle. and telling everybody that I loved them.
And for everybody who wouldn't know, what does TST stand for?
Oh, that was Talking Shit Tuesday.
I just wanted to hear you say it because your accent is wonderful. And basically
came across him on Facebook and I brought him over to G Plus after I discovered it. And I kept saying, please come into Hangouts, JD. Please, please. And then the next thing, JD starts Talking Shit Tuesday, and it just took off.
April Diamond wants to know, what sort of Scot are you?
What sort of Scot would you like me to be?
I think she's just teasing. Okay, so this might be a little bit of a sore subject, but Jade, how well did you know Jade?
Oh, Jade, I absolutely adored Jade. Jade and I would usually have a voice chat every single day. Wow. Some would be serious. Some would just be about gardening or cats, because we're both cat ladies. Sometimes it would be laughing at what some dipstick had said, or just having a vent, whatever, the way friends talk.
Sure.
Jade was absolutely fantastic. We were both adopted. So it was something else that we had in common and we talked about a few times. Jade was over a decade older than me. And it was interesting to see that the changes in the way adopted children were looked upon in just that short period of time. And so we had lots to talk about. And then she loved science. She absolutely loved science. And she knew, especially about dinosaurs and fossils. I learned so much from Jade. I could teach her molecular biology. But she taught me about the fossils, about dinosaurs. And she also taught me a lot of patience. Because she was a lovely, patient person. Whereas me, I've got quite a short fuse.
Yeah.
And I will go off like the 4th of July if I'm pushed.
I appreciate the reference. Thank you for that.
But she was lovely. She was a lovely lady.
I think if you said you'd go off like 1266, a bunch of our audience just would be like, "What?" It's a UK joke. If you don't get it, don't worry about it. Okay, so Spackle said that those two reminded you and Jade reminded her of sisters. Do you think that's an accurate depiction?
Do you know, in a way, yes, I think so. Although it's hard for me. I don't have any frame of reference because I was an only child. So I've got no idea what it's like to have a brother or a sister anyway. I think Jade's about the closest I would ever have got. I mean, I loved her dearly. She was such a strong lady as well. In some ways, I think I aspired to be more like Jade. And also, she had kept her position on faith a secret online for a long, long time. And then she came out as Roman Catholic, which shocked a lot of people. And wow. She had been at Catholic school and she had a very good Catholic education, which included evolution. But her knowledge of Roman Catholicism, of Christianity, and the Bible, her knowledge was so wide. And you learn so much from her. And the kindness that she showed to everybody.
Do you think that learning was one of the strengths of the old GDC?
Yes, I do. I remember when I first got involved in the hangouts, Psi 10 Bruggenkate was a big thing, and the presuppositionalist argument. Yeah. And I'd never heard of it. And I listened to some of the people running the presup argument, and it was just, how do you know that? 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 And you're thinking, for God's sake, it drove me nuts. And I thought, I must be really sick because I'm not getting this argument. I don't understand this. And I went to Ozzy. And I said, Ozzy, can we have a private voice chat, please? I need some help here. And I want to do it privately because I'm really embarrassed. Could you explain the presup argument to me? Because I don't understand it. And he explained it to me. And I said, is that it? He went, uh-huh. I said, but that's a load of marsh gas. He went, I know. And I actually thought at first that this was a really good argument and I was just too stupid to get the point. But then it turned out that no, it really was as stupid as it sounded in the first place. And so I learned from that. Because I came into this thinking that I'm a new person in here and I know nothing. And I learned that maybe sometimes your instincts are right and that somebody's talking rot. Or as I once said to Christopher Mouty, somebody isn't just wrong, they're potato. And it gave me a little bit more confidence in my own judgment there. So yeah, I learned a lot.
What do you think was like the height of that community?
I think the height of it. I think it was when people finally got a handle on the pre-sup argument and what it was actually saying. Which, I mean, the only thing it was saying was, how do you know that? 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 And they began to realise that this may sound, so highbrow, but it's not. All it is pushing this further down the line every single time. I think for me, and it'll be different for everybody, the best times were when it was discussions about science and about evolution rather than about the philosophy. I'm not a philosopher. I honestly not.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there will be people who prefer the philosophical arguments, and so their sort of highlight of those days will probably be more philosophical. But for me, it was the evolution and the creation. That was the interesting part.
So I want to go ahead and let the I'm going to try that again. Let the live chat know if you have questions. Now is the time to ask them. Go ahead and tag me. I'll get them for Fiona. I do want to review something Holy Spackle said real quick with you, Fiona. She said, presupposition, on what basis do you believe? How can you know anything? You can't know anything without assuming my worldview. The end.
Yeah, it was, when it came down to the bare bones of it, the entire argument rested on a bare assertion. Without God, there can be no knowledge. We have knowledge, therefore God. That was it. And it's that very first part of it that was just, it's a bare assertion. There is no evidence for it. They just throw it out there. They expect you to accept it. And they win.
Right.
End story. That was it. And it took people a long time to cotton on. I remember the first time Fundamentally Flawed had Saiten Bruggencate on, and he ran rings round them. And it was because this argument was, well, I'm going to be frank, okay?
Okay.
This argument was so fucking dumb that nobody could believe that they were actually understanding what the person was saying.
Right.
That's why I ended up speaking to Ozzy. Because they were falling into the trap that they were actually claiming everybody else was falling into in the first place. And it's like the argument. Oh God, the argument about solipsism. Oh God, the memory.
Well, listen, I'm a solipsist, and I asked everyone, and we're fine with it.
Mind. Oh, somebody has got to find that. The speech by True Empiricism, explaining to Alex Boughton what solipsism is and claiming that Alex Boughton believes all this, and Alex is busy saying, you need to stop, I'm not a solipsist. And True Empiricism is saying, yes, you are.
Right.
It was one of those conversations that was hilarious.
Sinister Porpoise asked, and hi Christopher Mowdy, how are you, sir? Sister Porpoise asked, are you ever going to do a video series using horses to disprove intelligent design?
Don't get me started. Just don't. I wrote a post in Sinister Porpoise's Discord back in the winter about why horses disprove intelligent design. And it was when Storm was very ill. I had a horrendous hoof abscess. And we thought we'd lose him. It was that bad. We actually thought he was going to shed the entire hoof capsule.
Oh, God.
And that would have been the end of it.
Yeah.
And I wrote this screed, and I had done it a few years ago. And it doesn't matter what you do with a horse. They get a sore stomach and their hooves fall off. Right? So too much grass, they get a sore stomach and their hooves fall off. Not enough grass, they get a sore stomach and their hooves fall off. Not enough water, they get a sore stomach and their hooves fall off. Too much water, they get a sore stomach and their hooves fall off. The ground's too hard, they get a sore stomach and their hooves fall off.
Right.
The ground's too soft, they get a sore stomach and their hooves fall off. Doesn't matter what you do with a horse, it gets a sore stomach and its hooves fall off. And I'm sorry, but any animal where no matter what you do with it, they get a sore stomach and their hooves fall off, is not intelligently designed. Because they would have been designed without the stomach or the hooves in that case. So yes, that's what Sinister Porpoise is talking about there. Horses, terrible design. Do you know, a horse's gut at one point loops back 180 degrees on itself, and it's a really sharp bend. And at the place where this sharp bend happens, it also narrows. And that's why they get gut blockages, because at the narrowing point, it's whipping back through 180 degrees. Are you telling me that's an intelligent design?
Right.
No.
Laura says to remind you that you and her were with Alex at Alex's house when he said that.
That's right. When there was a house party going on, and True Empiricism had insisted the hangout has to happen. It has to happen now. I say so. So we all piled into Alex's study and stayed on the floor while he did the hangout with True Empiricism. And True Empiricism's whiffling on about solipsism. And at one point, you see a chair on the left-hand side, I think it is, swing round. And you see Laura and you see the ponytail of hair. That's Laura's. I was on the floor retching with laughter during this conversation. And we were all trying to be so quiet. But he was having a party. People had come from all over the country, and somebody was insisting this hangout must happen right now. It was so rude. But that's the sort of things that went on in those days.
Laura says to ask you if jet-powered birds are intelligently designed.
Oh, Max Trivium and that brilliant video. This. Do you want to know about this argument that we got?
Oh, I absolutely do. Trust me, I have all evening, so please.
So, there was a pothead called Arcane Logos. And the clip is still out there somewhere. It must be, I'm sure I've got the video downloaded somewhere. It's unlisted now on the guy's channel, and I don't have the link. Arcane Logos explained how birds breathe. And he said they take air in one end. They take air in one end, and it goes all the way through their bodies and out the other end. And we all went jet power. It was the jet powered birds theory. And somebody made a video with this lovely classical music and little birds. And every time a bird flew off, there was just this big loud fart noise. It was absolutely wonderful. That's where the jet powered birds came from. They breathe in one end and it goes all the way through their body and out the other end.
It reminds me of something I saw on Twitter the other day. It said, remember when you kiss someone with an open mouth, you're connecting two 30-foot long tubes that are ended in buttholes. Yeah.
That is very, very true, I suppose, and it's okay when it's your husband.
Well, I would hope so. Aries says, is Arcane a Hebrew Israelite now? I don't know what that means.
Good grief. Yeah, the Black Hebrew Israelites, they are a religious sect.
Sure.
I think he might be. I know Mac. Mac became a Black Hebrew Israelite. He stands outside places and shouts at small kids going in to see Santa Claus. He was one of the young earth creationists that we dealt with back in the day. He hadn't read the Bible. I think he'd read 2 chapters. He was working his way through, and he would sit in Nadia's hangouts and tell everybody how to Christian properly. But he hadn't read the Bible.
I got to interrupt you for a second. I got to interrupt you for 1 second. Live chat, you knew what to expect when you came here, okay? Don't come at me now just because of my horrible sense of humor. You can't be mad about it now. Okay, go ahead, Fiona.
Yeah, so we dealt with some real characters back in the day that were, they were very strange people, but to see how they have now moved, they were so anti-Black Hebrew Israelite. They were pals of G-Man, and now they've become Black Hebrew Israelites. And I've yet to see him say anything about them. It's very telling.
Well, we've talked a little bit about the rise, and we've talked about the top, and now I want to talk about the fall of the GDC, because it's definitely nothing like what it once was. Holy Spackle has said on multiple occasions she feels like the GDC split up into different discords. And I'd like to hear... real quick, I just got a question in from the Holy Spackle. Speaking of her, please ask Fiona about the nut video her and Jade made.
I think that's the last time I was ever involved in anything that was like the old community that we were. G-Man had written, how G-Man's into rap battles. He thinks that a rap battle proves a point. And he challenges people to rap battles. And he was with his crowd of friends called Shield Squad, with Vocab Malone, etc. Don't ask, I don't know. And they decided to write a rap dissing the Black Hebrew Israelites and all the rest of it.
Okay.
And G-Man, he decided they were paying somebody to write the music, all that. But G-Man thought he would do his own, and he included a lyric that said that he would bust a nut in your wife, and then he changed it to bust a drag nut in your wife, and all of his Shield Squad friends said, G-Man, that's not really appropriate for a song from Christians. And I mean, they had a point. I'll give them that. They had a point. So, missing the point completely, G-Man changed the lyrics to, I'll bust a nut on your doctrine. So he's now talking about busting a nut on someone's face. So he changed the wrong bit. So Jade and I went live to explain to G-Man what the phrase busting a nut meant. Jade was 69 at the time. and I was, mid-50s, I think. So here's these 2 matronly ladies live on YouTube explaining what busting a nut means to this 40-year-old man. And poor Christian anarchist joined the hangout with no idea what it was about, to find the 2 of us talking about this. And I think he was horrified. But Jade and I had such a good laugh in that hangout. Just a few months before she died.
Listen, I just want to say this in live chat. If you don't know what that phrase means,
go watch the video on my channel.
Go watch the video on her channel. I'm not an educator. Okay, we aren't. We're not going over it today. Or ever. And hi, Jessica. How are you? Hope work's going well. Okay, so you had this robust community. You had all of these different people talking about atheism and agnosticism and Protestantism and Catholicism and nut busting and horses and intelligent design. What happened?
Steve McRae happened.
Okay.
That's the easiest way to explain it. I was sitting minding my own business one day. It was maybe around about 4:30 in the afternoon. And I got an invite to join a hangout. And it was from some character by the name of Steve McRae. And he was asking me to come in. He'd seen my stuff. He knew I was a scientist. And he had 2 young earth creationists he would like me to talk to. So I didn't know who this guy was, but I always tried, if it involved science education, I was up for it. And so I joined the hangout. And in it I found Steve McRae, Isaiah Sloan, who was a young science guy. He was his science was pretty hot. Josiah McLean, who turned out to be 15, and Antonio Fletcher. The less said about him, the better. And Steve McRae is holding forth to these guys. And I did my best, and that was it. And I got invited into another couple of his hangouts, and everything was fine. And then I said to him, listen, there's a whole bunch of people on G Plus that all talk, and we get together once a week. And we decompress because we weren't organised at that point. Some people were arguing on Facebook, some were arguing on Twitter, some were arguing in YouTube comments, others were making videos. And once a week, we'd all get together and we would regale each other with tales of the idiocy that we had met up with in the previous week. And I said to him, you should come along to TST. Biggest mistake in my life.
So it's your fault.
Well, this is the thing. I'm hoping that somebody else is actually going to hold their hand up and say, no, Fiona, before you ever said that to him, we'd already told him about it. I'm desperate for somebody to volunteer to take the blame. Because I remember saying to him, you'll really like it. JD's great. He's got this show going. We all have a good laugh. It's not serious. And then Steve started coming to TST. And straight away, I noticed something. It was, you know that description of 2 sea lions squabbling over a grape?
I do.
Right, okay. Well, imagine it as 2 alpha male sea lions squabbling for the alpha place. But it was much more subtle than that. JD ran TST. It was his show. We all knew it. And it's just polite. This is he's streaming it. It's his show. Steve seemed to be pushing for power. There was a wee push. I could feel this slight friction. JD was always very, very polite. But there was just something. It was nothing I could put my finger on. I just felt it. He wanted to run the show, basically. And it wasn't his show, it was JD's. So, I mean, from the word go, I did have that feeling. And I thought I was just being neurotic about it. Because as I say, it was nothing I could put my finger on. And then he decided he was going to organise the GDC. And money could be made here. And so he formed his GDC group on Google. So that was the Great Debate Community trademark. He wanted to get a trademark. He wanted to copyright the term "the Great Debate Community." You can't do that. But he wanted to make it so that nobody else could use those terms. And then his brilliant idea for all this, he made the YouTube channel, was that people who made videos, like me and my science videos, instead of uploading to our own channels, we would upload them to the Great Debate Community YouTube channel, which he had monetized and he made the money from. So we would make the videos, people would go to his channel that he was getting money from and watch the videos there and make the money for him, and in return we'd get a shout out, and he would shout out our channels. And I remember thinking at the time, but what's the point in shouting out our channels if all the bloody content is going on that one?
Right.
This doesn't make sense. This was never about money. I did everything for free. I'm not monetized. I've never been monetized. I haven't wanted to monetize. Okay? So it's never been about wanting a cut of the money. I didn't want any money. It was just something like, why should any good content that I make go on to the channel that makes him money, and then I've got nothing left for my channel? This doesn't make sense. This is not a business model. This is a nonsense. This is a scam.
Were you involved in the drafting of the brass tacks document?
No, I wasn't, funnily enough. I saw it beforehand. The brass tacks document was created as an agenda for a meeting with Steve. So it was created ahead of the meeting. And it was all the things that needed to be brought up. And when I saw it, anything that I would want to have said that needed to be brought up had already been mentioned. So there was nothing for me to add. So I didn't add anything to the document. But I didn't agree with everything on it, but I did agree with the majority of things on it.
Such as?
Things that I did agree with. The autocratic manner, the dictatorial attitude, complaining that moderators weren't moderating and doing it, and he was overworked and all the rest of it. And as soon as you took moderator action, he overturned it, and you didn't know what he wanted. So I want you to do so much more, take some weight off me, and you do it, and he undoes it and says, run it past me the next time you're going to do something like that. So the next time you run it past him and he says, why are you asking me? You're a moderator. And it was ever moving goalposts. I found out I was a moderator in the G Plus group weeks after the event. He never even asked me if I wanted to be a moderator. He just made me one. It was, you were just being told this is what you're going to do. No. So, I stuck around in that group, attempting to moderate it. But it was impossible, because if you did make a moderator decision, Steve would overturn it. Or if you held back a moderator decision, you'd get blasted for not having done something. And he would do it all in public to his moderators. But any criticism of him had to be done in private. And it came to a head when he issued his edict that anybody going into a G-Man hangout in the next 2 weeks would be banned from his channel, from hangouts, for 2 weeks. And he banned Heavy Hauler, because Heavy Hauler went into a G-Man hangout. And I remember talking to Steve behind the scenes, saying, you can't do this. It's all very well saying, wouldn't it be funny to see what would happen if we all completely ignored G-Man for 2 weeks and watched him lose his mind? That's one thing. But to use a big stick and say to people, and if you don't do this, I will ban you from my hangouts, that ain't going to work. And most of the people in your group are atheists. And trying to get atheists to agree in anything is like trying to herd cats. It's not going to work. They will do what they want to do and what they think is right. He didn't want to know. And then he started to almost like backpedal. Well, I didn't mean it that way. I meant my personal channel, not the Great Debate Community YouTube channel. I'm saying, well, maybe you should have been clearer then in the way you said it, because what you said lacked clarity. And this was an ongoing problem, that when he did something like this and it was questioned on it, it was always, oh, I didn't mean it that way. And then it would all be reworded. Retcon, basically. And it's a really subtle form of gaslighting. But he wasn't for backing down over the G-Man thing. And so what I did was, I left the G Plus Great Debate Community and then I rejoined it. And by doing that, I lost my moderator status without having to ask him to take it away from me. See, I didn't want to be in a position as a moderator where I would have to enforce this rule on anybody. Because I didn't agree with it. I was dead against it. And rather than create a song and dance and ask to be unmodded, I just left and then rejoined. No longer a mod, problem solved.
Do you think that there was something that you and, the people that were kicked out, you, Dragnot, Nate, Ocean, the people that kicked out or left with bad blood between you and Steve, do you think that there's something more that you could have done to try and fix the situation instead of just, the mass exodus that happened?
No, I don't think so, because I think everybody bent over backwards. The only thing I would say is that when he first turned up on the scene, I should have said fuck off, but I didn't, because I'm not like that. I didn't know the guy. Nobody could foresee what was going to happen. And by the time we realised what was happening, it was too late. He'd done it, and people had to walk. But I mean, after the G-Man thing, there was an episode of TST, and for the first time, Steve was called out on TST, and he's had a visceral hatred of the TST crowd ever since. And interestingly, in that episode of TST, Jade was there, and one of the people that was calling Steve out for this idiocy of, if you go into a G-Man hangout, I'll ban you, was Red's Rhetoric. He was the one that had come up with the idea of, let's all ignore G-Man for 2 weeks and watch his head explode. But Steve had taken it that one step further and said, or I'll ban you from. So Red's called him out on that as well. Everybody called him out on it. And that was it. From there on in, the TST crowd were all evil because they had dared to criticise Steve.
Was there... What I'm trying to do right now, I'm trying to imagine if Steve were here, what questions would he ask? Because Steve will not come on my channel for whatever reason. I would love for him to do an episode of this series, but he won't do it. I would just literally let the man talk for an hour. I wouldn't even interrupt. Do you think that there was a better way to approach him than the brass tacks document? Do you think it was the approach itself that offended him?
No. Yes and no. Other approaches had been tried. I'd been talking to him behind the scenes. In the days of Hangouts, we had the little external chats, the little green talk boxes, and I would speak to him privately there. And Jade spoke to him privately there as well, and I think others did too. But these were private conversations, and I tried to explain. Look, if you're putting out things that you're then going to say, I didn't mean it that way, maybe you need to sit down and think about the wording before you post it. Because we're all then left and clean up on aisle 5 when this happens. But people had tried a number of approaches prior to brass tacks. And in fact, for the longest of times, I thought that it was me, that I was the problem, that everybody else thought Steve was great, and that I was the only one saying there's a problem here. And I can't even remember how it happened, but there was a conversation one day. Somebody said something that it could have been me for all I remember, and the bloody floodgates opened, and I thought, shit, I'm not the only one. That was a real eye-opener for me, that I'd sat there and I hadn't criticised them to anybody because I thought it was me. I thought maybe I was being mean-spirited. Maybe I was somehow being jealous of. I mean, I just thought it was me. It was my problem. And so I didn't say anything to anyone. So when I discovered that everybody else had the same problems, good Lord. That was a surprise to me. It was also a relief to know that I wasn't losing my mind.
Well, maybe not totally. Do you think that...
Well, let me just explain
Sure.
one thing. What went wrong with brass tacks is that, as I say, it was produced in advance of this meeting, okay? And the morning after the meeting, somebody put it out public.
Yep.
And I remember getting in touch with the person and saying, "What the fuck are you doing?" And they took the link back again, but it was too late. It had been seen. So I get called by someone who shall remain nameless, rhetoric, and he was in tears. "You all stabbed me in the back. You all promised me you would do all these things and you'd give him a chance and I would hold his feet to the fire, and I really put myself out there. And then after you promised me all this, you went away and you wrote this document." And I said, "What? No. That document was made before the meeting. That was the agenda for the meeting. Nobody has gone back on any promise that was made. This wasn't produced after the meeting." But he wouldn't believe it. "No, you stabbed me in the back. You wrote this after the meeting." And try as I might, I could not convince him that this had not been produced after the meeting. He was convinced of it. And yet it had been circulating for weeks beforehand. And that's where this venom has all come from. This idiotic misunderstanding. Him thinking it was produced after the meeting. After everybody had said, "We'll give Steve a chance." Not realising that it had been produced before the meeting, before we talked it all out. It had to be, "You did this to stab me in the back." So that's where the real bad feeling comes from.
Laura says the brass tacks document was just a list of issues people had with Steve, and then it would be narrowed to the primary problems to be presented to Steve.
Yeah.
Also, if I remember correctly, there was something in there about a council of 6 people or something that would advise him. That was part of the proposal. Was that an idea you liked?
Well, that was something that I think Steve came up with. Council of 9 or whatever. And you're thinking, do you know, this is... If you've never come across Heath Robinson, go and look him up. But this was just Heath Robinson's solution. We were having to add bits on to fix this problem and another bit on to fix a different problem. And this thing was growing and growing, and bells and whistles and all sorts. And all it needed was for Steve to realise that you cannot be a dictator in a kingdom of cats. It doesn't work. Because the cats will just take one look at you and shit on your carpet.
Sure.
That's what happens. You can't tell people what to do, what to think, who to go after, what argument to use. You can't do that. They'll talk about what they want. Because we were all individuals. We weren't the great debate community trademark that he was trying to make us all into. He wanted a group with group think, and everybody said to that idea.
Is that a direct quote?
Basically, yes, but with a lot of wild, rude gestures as well. It was people just saying, no, we've done fine before you came along, thank you very much, just being ourselves. Why do we need to be little Steves? Steve's mini-bees. No. We've got our own opinions, we've got our own voices, we've got our own interests. I really don't care about fucking Peloton turbines and all the rest of it. You're a physics guy. You do the physics. That's fine. Doesn't mean I've got to be interested in that bit too. But no, we've all got to start arguing about bloody, was it zirconium halos and all the rest of it. I know bugger all about them.
Right.
Why would I want to argue about them?
You got me.
So, do you see what I mean? He was trying to dictate the agenda that everybody had to argue on at any one time. And that's how we got into this DNA and water debacle. And the longer that went on, the more and more uncomfortable I became. Because every time you try to move away from it, Steve would draw you back in. Because he wanted to talk about it, because he knew he'd got Ronnie on or True Empiricism on this one, so he wanted to keep hammering it, and it got embarrassing because people who weren't even involved in it, like Fuzz Rana, Steve decides to ask him about it, even though prior to the hangout, me and Jade said, "No, don't bring it up, Steve. For God's sake, don't bring it up. This is nonsense." Promised he wouldn't bring it up. He brought it up. And we're sitting in there feeling like absolute fools. And it just became very uncomfortable. But Spackle said something that I actually wanted to mention. It was like boiling a frog. Each step he took pushed you that one little bit further. And it wasn't much of a step. So it didn't seem like much. If he tried it all in one fell swoop, then I think we would have been on the ball a lot quicker. But it was little steps, the boiling frog syndrome. Which apparently isn't true. But who cares? It's a brilliant way to describe it.
It is. I think Holy Spackle hit the nail on the head. Again, I want to try to be as fair to Steve as possible. So... Again, I wish he would come on here, but I'm going to assume a little bit his point of view, okay? From his point of view, he's trying to put together a YouTube channel that highlights a bunch of people in the community that he thinks are talented or thinks are creators that can get people talking, can get a conversation started. So he says, hey, I'm going to start this YouTube channel and ask these people to create content on that YouTube channel. And that way we can centralize some of these discussions. So there can be a central place where people can have these discussions and learn about all of these creators. And then that spider web will expand. And as people come and find you at the GDC, then they'll go to your channel and get more interested in your content if they care more about your content. I think... Again, I don't know, but I think that's what he was thinking.
Yes, I get that.
Go ahead.
But what he was missing was if we put all of our content onto his channel, there was nothing left on our channel for people to be interested in. That's what was missing in his calculations.
Sure. No. And that's the point that I was getting to. Do you think that if Steve had said, I'm going to share the revenue with all of the creators that contribute, do you think that that would have maybe kept things together?
No, not as far as I can't speak for others, but it's not for me. I mean, I've always done this for nothing. I'm not interested in money from it. I suspect most others felt the same way too. I mean, this was in the days before super chats and all the rest of it. The best you got was AdSense, and that was it.
Right.
And I don't think anybody was interested in that at all. You needed to have a really big channel, and you needed to have really good view numbers and audience retention and all the rest of it. And let's be honest here. The type of stuff that I talked about, evolution versus creation, is as dry as dust. It's boring. Except to a small group of people. But that's just my field. I'm an absolute nerd.
Me too.
I enjoy this. Yeah, I get excited at this sort of thing. Other people just think, oh God, not science again. But I get excited by it. So money was never a thing for me, and I don't think it was for very many others. So no, I don't think that would have made a blind bit of difference.
Where was it? There was a comment. Oh, okay. Sorry. Laura said she's talking to the Holy Spackle, but I'm watching this conversation go back and forth. Laura and Holy Spackle are talking about Jade, and she says that Jade was on TST the week before she died. Were you on that show?
I honestly can't remember.
I feel like somebody said you were on that show. That's why I ask.
I can't remember if I was on that particular one, because that was, let me think. My husband had a stroke in the March, and Jade died in the June.
Right.
And he'd just gone back to work when Jade died. And he wasn't able to drive, and I was having to go and pick him up at a local bus stop every night. So for a few weeks round about that time, my memory isn't brilliant. The only thing that really, really stands out is on the day that I was told she'd died. 5 minutes before I needed to leave the house to go and collect my husband at a bus stop. And I didn't know if this was a troll messing with me or not. God. Because it was a stranger contacting me on Facebook. And I think I got a hold of Holy Spackle, who managed to get a hold of a cop. And while I was away collecting my husband, he managed to get a hold of the coroner and confirmed that she died. And I came in from collecting my husband, and the message was there, it was confirmed. But I remember I cried all the way to the bus stop to get my husband, because either Jade had died or it was a very evil troll, and either of those two were really upsetting to me. So I cried all the way to the bus stop, and I cried all the way back. And then there was the message saying it's been confirmed. That's the one thing that stands out round about that period for me. And then having to tell people.
It was a pretty sudden death, right?
Very. It was announced on June the 6th. But they think she died on June the 3rd. She died in her bed.
God. There has been a lot that has gone on between you and Steve since the GDC ended? I won't get into it unless you want to. I don't really think there's a need, but in your mind... Oh, go ahead. If you want to say something, please.
There are two things that stand out. One of them I'd actually forgotten about until after I made my Warden video. On August the 18th of the year that Jade had died, so she died on June the 6th, on August the 18th, Steve put up a post saying that anybody who remained within the Roman Catholic Church was a rape apologist for staying in the church. And I think I responded to it with maybe one post or two posts. And then I just left it. Because by August the 18th, we had 4 weeks left to get the details hammered down for the California meetup for the funeral. So I was run off my little feet. I was having to replace my passport. I was having to get currency. I was trying to organise with people where are we going to be staying. Sam was trying to organise the place that we would stay. I had to get word to people. The suites took between 4 and 8 people. We were dividing people up into groups of who was in what suite so that we didn't have personality clashes. We were dealing with all of that stuff, and in the middle of it, Steve made that post. Well, you can imagine, whoof, over my head, plop onto the wall, because I just had too much going on.
Sure.
And Steve to this day says that post is why I made my video. No, it's not. It was only after I made my video that Laura reminded me of that post. Because I'd forgotten all about it. Completely. And the other thing was that I arrived home from California, minus my luggage, which went off on a tour of Europe, with my fudge in it. My chocolate fudge was in that suitcase. But I arrived home, and we did TST when I'd only been home for a few hours. And then Steve put out a post telling all of us just how much Jade had despised us all. And it was a horrible post. She hated us all. She thought we were foul. This is what met everybody returning home from Jade's funeral. A post from Steve saying that.
Jesus.
And I remember, I think somebody actually sent me a part of it. They managed to grab it. Because I didn't take a screenshot of it. I was just too upset with the whole thing. Because unbeknownst to Steve, Jade was a friend to everybody. She had stayed in touch with Steve. Jade and I would talk about this quite often. That she was trying to reach out to Steve. And she was still trying to sort things. Right up until when she died. Steve didn't know that Jade was still talking to everybody else. He just assumed that she loved him and hated everybody else. He didn't realise that the true kindness of Jade was to see good in everybody and to try and work to solve the problem. I didn't have the patience that Jade had. I walked away from him. Jade didn't. She didn't walk away from the others either. And to come home to that post was absolutely awful. And at that point, that's when I just had no more to do with Steve. I didn't get into anything with him. That was it. End of story. That was it. I was done with him.
You said there were two things, so what was the other?
The other thing was the post he made about the Roman Catholic.
Oh, okay.
Jade was a Roman Catholic, and he's
Right.
posting this 1 month before her funeral.
Sure.
Anybody who remained within the Roman Catholic Church was a rape apologist. And he forgot he was also dissing Jade then as well. He didn't see that. Jade was a devout Catholic. And he didn't realise that by making that post, he was shitting on her as well.
Jesus Christ.
And then, right. And of course, it wasn't a funeral in a Roman Catholic church, but there were Bible readings from Cherie. There was religion involved in it. And so when you take those two things, the post made a month before the funeral, and then the post made when we all got home from the funeral, that's when you say, nah, you're done, mate. This is beyond anything. This is vicious. This is designed to hurt. That's all it is. But as I say, I'd actually forgotten about the August post until after I had made my video and Laura reminded me of it, and I went, oh, do you know, you're right, I'd forgotten that. But he made out that Jade was his secret agent reporting back to him, and we all knew that wasn't true, because Jade was very open about talking to everybody. And we knew she was still in contact with Steve. And we didn't hold that against her. And we knew why. She was doing it because she was Jade. And that's what Jade did. Jade was a peacemaker. But with Steve, it was all about sides. And maybe things could have been mended. But then I got a message on Facebook months later. Somebody said, you need to know about this, Fiona. Steve's posting in the Great Debate Facebook group about you. And he had me blocked, so I couldn't see his posts by this point. So they had to copy it for me. And he was telling everybody that I had wrecked Jade's funeral. Oh, and people thought this was so terrible. Fiona wrecked Jade's funeral so the attention could all be on her. And we had the video of the funeral going off without a hitch. But we couldn't put it out there because that video showed someone's face and that person didn't want their face seen. So we couldn't even push back on it. And Steve knew it.
Yeah.
And it was very difficult. But yeah, Jay's funeral went off without a hitch. Whales and seasickness. If you ask J.D. Kane what a funeral was like, whales and seasickness. Because he was throwing up his gut somewhere while wondering at these whales. And it was wonderful that day. It really was. It was sad, but it was wonderful.
I mean, the live chat agrees with you. It's what everybody's saying. Well, listen, I'd like to keep these things to an hour, and we've gone for 90 minutes, but
Sorry.
No, do not be sorry, please. This is one of the reasons why I wanted you to be one of the last episodes was because I already knew how close you and Jade were, and that you could give us some perspective that, you know, other people who weren't as close to her just didn't have. But I want to give you, I want to make sure you've got enough time to say anything else you need to say. Tell any other stories that you need to tell before we wind this down. So is there anything that I haven't asked that you want to talk about?
Do you know, there's something that I haven't even touched on yet. People say that I hate Steve McRae, and I don't. I hate some of the things that he's done.
Same here. I don't hate Steve McRae.
And for the longest of times, even after I said, that's it, I'm done with him, I still held out hope.
Yep.
I didn't realise the sheer visceral hatred he had for me until I found him spreading this lie about me wrecking the funeral. And just for interest, the person who was playing up at the time, in the days before and after the funeral, was in touch with Steve and 82 Productions by phone every day for advice on how to handle people at the funeral. Yeah. So that was going on. Remember, I was in the same suite as him. I know when he was on the phone to them. They were playing it behind the scenes. But even then, even after that, I still held out hope. I mean, Steve had moved on. He was doing his non-sequitur show. I wished him well with that. I never ever watched it. But I really did wish him well with the non-sequitur show. And when it all went down with that, I remember saying, I can see where Kyle's coming from in a way, but he shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't have done it. He needs to pay Steve what he owes to Steve.
Yep.
He needs to honour the agreement that he had.
Yep, I agree.
And that was me supporting Kyle stealing all the money. According to Steve, it didn't matter what you said.
Sure.
I
said it. Kyle and I had a show, and on that show, I said multiple times, you owe Steve some amount of money. You've got to figure out what it is, and you have to pay him. You owe him this money. And still to this day, I'm a Kyle supporter, and I'm a cult follows Kyle. I'm like, sure, whatever. Okay.
Everybody is. If you weren't willing to make a video calling Kyle all sorts of nasty things, then you were condoning Kyle's actions. No, I was too busy dealing with other things in my life. As I said, my husband he then had a second. I was dealing with all of that. And I mean, that's a bit of a worry. That it's a bigger worry than, well, what does Steve want to say about this? Sorry, Steve, you don't come before my husband's health. Sorry about that. I'm really sorry about that. And I know that with you being a king in this game, you should have come before my husband. But fuck off. Anyway, there are times when your own real life gets in the way of you doing what somebody demands that you do. You've got to say, I have priorities here, and you ain't one of them, pal. And that's what I had to do. But I still said, he has to honour his agreement with Steve. He has to pay Steve the money that he owes to Steve. And I also remember I broke the rule of having nothing to do with Steve. And I kept trying to drop hints saying, Steve, you need to shut up on this matter. You're saying things that could cause you problems further down the line. Things like, I can only make so much before it affects my medical. Things like that. I was trying to get him to shut up because he was going to make trouble for himself. But that was me supporting Kyle. And in a way, I was angry with myself for even trying to say anything that would help him after everything that he'd done. But at the same time, I was watching him self-destruct on live streams, and it was hard to watch. It was really hard to watch that. And I had to give up. And I think it was maybe the week after NSS went tits up that the warden interview happened. And I remember at the time saying the problem wasn't that he platformed the guy, it was the excuses he gave for why the guy was innocent.
And I've said this
because
and I've said this 1,000 times probably, but I would have somebody on this channel that was like Warden, that was a convicted rapist, whatever, but I would not deny that they were a convicted rapist. I would not say that the victim was lying. I would not hide that they were. I would not call them an honorable person. And we would talk about the fact that they were a convicted rapist. Now, maybe somebody that has been incarcerated for rape has been reformed, or they have something to talk about with the law enforcement, with imprisonment or something. I can think of a lot of interesting topics, a lot of interesting questions I could ask somebody like that. That was never, ever the issue. Ever, not once. And people to this day, 2 days ago, somebody left a comment on a video about it. That was never the issue. It was the way in which he responded to criticism about it. So if you're going to have somebody on there, listen, if I had it on there, I guarantee you, if I had somebody like that on one of my channels, I would get criticism about it. I guarantee it. But I bet you 1,000% that I would handle it better. That was the problem.
And yeah. And in fact, I remember at the time, people spoke about this. They were going to make a video about how Steve had handled this. Not that they had the guy on, but how he'd handled it. And the people who were going to make the video, screenshots, etc., were all being sent to them. But then they didn't make the video. And I kept getting asked, when's the video coming out? When's the video coming out? And eventually I got in touch with one of the people making the video and said, what's going on, what's happening? And they said, oh, we changed our mind now. I thought, oh, great, thanks for letting us know. And I got them to send everything to me, and I cobbled it together in about 2 days. And I mean, I hadn't seen most of this material. It'd all been sent to them. So I just cobbled this together as quickly as I could, and I just put the video out there. And the rest is history, because it didn't go down well.
No,
it went down very, very badly.
And it was your video that inspired me to make my own video about that. But go ahead.
There's something, I mean, we're ignoring an elephant in the room, which you mentioned to me prior to us going live.
Listen, all I said was, if you didn't want to talk about it, I wouldn't bring it up. That's all I said.
That's fine, but I'm going to talk about it.
Go right ahead.
Talk about it for
Sure.
That was the genesis for Cheshire Vic deciding to publicly accuse me of sexually assaulting Red Rhetoric at JFK in 2017, which is a load of bloody marsh gas, because there was somebody, a third person as a witness, who knows exactly what happened. And his the description that Red gives of what happened is rubbish to begin with. And certainly, even his description wouldn't amount to sexual assault. And he says it wasn't sexual assault, but Cheshire Vic chose 3 times to publicly accuse me of sexual assault. And then she explained in a 4th one her reasoning behind it to make a layered argument, which meant that if anybody defended me against this, they could turn around and say, well, what, like Steve defended Warden? Oh, well, that makes you a rape apologist as well, because you're defending Fiona. Is she saying I raped him in international arrivals at 2:10 in the afternoon in broad daylight in a packed JFK airport? Seriously? Off her head. However, that accusation of hers has actually been serious.
And I want to say something real quick before you follow this up, because Hannah just said that she was the third person, Red and Cheshire, lying. I guess I can say this publicly now. I've known this for a long time. Hannah told me ages ago that she was there, but it didn't want to say anything about it. So I've known
I've
this.
kept her name out of it as much as I can.
Absolutely, and I did too. And I've known this for a long time, and I didn't say anything publicly because Hannah asked me not to, so I didn't. And Hannah, I applaud you for coming out and saying it. Go ahead.
What's happened now is last year things got pretty bad because with this accusation hanging over me, there were certain things that I could no longer do that I had done before. And I had been working with someone. I'd been supporting a victim of rape. And she was heading towards a trial. And she was the main prosecution witness. And suddenly I'm out of the picture. Her supporter is no longer there. I'm gone. And she's not given an explanation. All she knows is that the one person she was counting on just to be there for her was no longer there. And this was in a case of a child abusing priest. It was historical child abuse. And I'm sorry if you get demonetized for this.
I'm not monetized, so you're totally fine.
I don't want to sugarcoat this for YouTube. This was a priest who was accused of doing this to a number of children. And they'd finally built the case, and she was the main witness because she'd been the oldest child that it happened to. I mean, she lost her support. She lost her courage, and I'm not calling her a coward. And she went to the police and said she was withdrawing her testimony. And the police had no option but to drop the case against this priest. And they told this lady, by the way, it's your fault he's back on the street again. And she tried to kill herself. So last year, as we were heading into the pandemic, and I'm getting worried for health and all the rest of it, I was also dealing with this, and I was losing my knowing what was happening, and knowing that this guy was back on the street, and someone told me to pull myself together and not be so upset. And I'm sorry, but when you're in the middle of going through things, you can't just get over it because you're still in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And this is what really, as Wayne Hudson would say, this is what really boiled my piss. Because I couldn't say anything about what was going on in the background at that time. I couldn't say a thing, but I was losing my mind. Knowing this guy's now back out there. We don't know what he's doing. I don't know if he's back in another parish. So, let me say this, and I am going to get so much fucking shit for this, but I'm going to say it. Hey, Cheshire Vic, you're all about victims. Congratulations, you made a hell of a lot more. Well done. Because that guy's walking the streets because of your stupid little games, dearest Cheshire. But hey, I'll pull myself together. Sorry, I had to get that off my chest. I really did. Because
you're fine.
I feel so strongly about supporting victims. And to know that because someone told that lie, a serially abusing priest is walking the streets again. And that poor lady tried to kill herself because of it. These are the repercussions of lies like these. And this is now what I have to live with. Knowing that I let that woman down. I let her down. Because I couldn't be there for her anymore. And that tears me apart inside to this day. Because I needed to protect others. That lady got sacrificed. And any other victims of that priest, their sacrifices for my protection of other people. And if anybody wonders why I'm still angry, you think on that. How many more people need to be sacrificed to protect others that don't want to get involved? How many? How many children? How many adult victims that have to revisit what happened in their childhood? And once they've gone through all that and they get to weeks before their court date and then it all falls apart. How many more? Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I need to stop at this point because I'm getting.
No, I know. I have
really wound up, and the anger is really coming out.
Yeah,
and
I'm the same way. Like there's a bunch I want to say too, but I.
So yeah. So we have Cheshire Vic to thank for the fact that there is a child sexual predator walking the streets in Scotland because of her. Thank you, Chesh. Now, fuck off. Dear, how's that? Oh, and before I forget, God bless. There you go.
Fiona, I think you might have just done the greatest interview that I've ever conducted. And I appreciate it. You are an absolute treasure. And I was so overwhelmingly excited when you told me you wanted to do this, and I really, really, really appreciate you being here with me.
Sorry, I'm shaking like a leaf here.
It's okay.
It's just the anger. I do have a dreadful temper, and when I get angry, I shake and I cry, and it makes me look so weak, but it's sheer unadulterated.
Fiona, I think you're a lot of things, but you're not weak. You are not weak. And I need to say something too to Hannah. Hannah, you aren't a coward. Your act was not one of cowardice. I understand exactly why you wanted to keep things quiet for as long as you did. You aren't a coward. I never thought that you were a coward. And I applaud you, my friend. And I'm always here if you need me, and you know that already. But I'm always here if you need me. Always. All right, we're going to shut this down because we're both going to go on long profanity-laden rants if we don't. Where can people find you?
I don't. Well, ever since the stuff from Chesh, I don't do videos anymore. I tweet. That's about it.
Okay.
I've withdrawn from nearly every Discord I was in. Because this stigma that hangs over me now means that I don't really want to do very many online interactions. I was nearly physically sick before coming live with you tonight because of the effect that this has had on me. Because you have to remember, I'm a rape victim myself. Mm-hmm. So this isn't just, somebody on the periphery not knowing what it's like. I've been there. And then I'm going through all this all over again. Yeah. And so they can't find me anywhere, really, unless they find me on Twitter. But currently, because these accusations started up again on Twitter last week, and I think maybe a month before that as well, they were brought up again. I've had to protect my Twitter because I get the accusations of, oh look, it's Fiona the pervert. So my social media is basically gone.
No,
I've done the pandemic without it.
I get it. Well,
quiet pandemic.
Well, you can always. I'm always here if you just need somebody to listen. You know that. All right, I'm going to shut this thing down. Fiona, thank you again. Live chat, thank you guys. I will probably be live on Twitch later tonight. I'm getting a new toy, so something to... Yeah, it's a inline amplifier for my microphone. So we'll probably be on Twitch in an hour or two. So be looking out for that. Follow me, twitch.tv/EthanPlaysLive. I hope to catch you guys there. Fiona, thank you again. Live chat, thank you guys. And we will see you all next time. Good night, everybody.